Hello there, my name is John Szczepaniuk. You might recognize me from magazines such as Retro Gamer, where I'm a regular contributor, and also as managing editor on this fine Sega book here. Now I'm here with you today to sell you a book about video games. There are many fantastic books on this subject matter. Some of my favorites include Stephen Kent's Ultimate History, Chris Kohler's Power Up, and David Sheff's Game Over. However, there are not many which focus on the Japanese history of video games and contain interview material in English. One example is Power Up, and another is Family Computer 1983 to 1994, which was produced by the Tokyo Metropolitan Museum. It contained 8 really fantastic interviews in it. Your only other option is a lifetime subscription to a variety of magazines. Now, I want to change this. I want to sell to you the most ambitious book ever envisioned, filled with Japanese interviews and documenting the lesser-known side of things. I want every page to contain an undocumented fact or anecdote. I want to interview those who have never been interviewed before. This year marks the 30th anniversary of Nintendo's Famicom and the MSX home computer. It's the perfect time for this kind of book. The main factor which limits myself and fellow journalists is the language barrier. Few speak fluent Japanese, forcing the need for a translator. If it benefits a game publisher, they will sometimes arrange one, but not often. My solution? Imagine an ocean-bound icebreaker smashing through that language barrier. I intend to fly to Japan and hire the best interpreter I can. Some might ask, why not just do it via emails? Unfortunately, emails aren't the best option to do interviews in a foreign language. They're slow, cumbersome, and they tend to be a one-shot only type of affair. Imagine a space probe being fired into a gas giant. You've only got one chance at it. You'll get some data back, but that's it. Whatever you get, that's all you've got. Face-to-face interviews are always the best option. To give you an example, I interviewed Kazuma Kujo regarding Metal Slug. It was via email with 2 translators, and he explained how prior to Metal Slug he developed In the Hunt for arcades. But he had trouble finding inspiration for it, so he'd leave the office, he'd take a break on a park bench somewhere, and one day he closed his eyes and he heard the sound of a water fountain, and this inspired him. Make the game underwater. Have it in submarines, and of course this would influence Metal Slug, which was something of a follow-up. Except Metal Slug only had tanks in the beginning. The people, Marco and Tomer, they were only added later, after location testing. Unfortunately, the email replies were short, and it wasn't possible for me to elaborate on any points like I would have if it had been a face-to-face interview. At least 1/3 of the Kickstarter goal will be purely for hiring interpreters. There's a pie chart breaking things down further down the page, and I've been in contact with localizers such as Jeremy Blaustein, Agnes Kaku, and Alexandra O. Smith, all of whom offered advice and put me in touch with reliable people. I've got contacts and support to make this work. Journalists, PR people, designers, localizers, artists. I've got an A-list network ready to help if this succeeds. I'm sure some of you will feel that perhaps it can be done with less than the stated goal. But the point of this Kickstarter is to flawlessly remove the language barrier hampering writers. If I can't do it professionally and with the best interpreter possible, then it's just not worth doing. Professional consecutive interpretation is a highly valued skill. That's why the going rate is about 100,000 yen per 8-hour day. Our words need to flow with eloquence and precision. My portfolio of work will hopefully convince you, my potential backers, of my writing. And I know that Japanese developers want to talk In every interview I've done with them, they are always surprised that English speakers even remember their games. And I find this tragic because Japan has such a rich history of video games and people want this information. We just don't have access to it because of the language barrier. In fact, already several have expressed an interest in being interviewed for this project. Let me put it to you this way. When you walk into a bookstore and you see on a shelf a book for £30, the publisher that published that book is gambling on it having enough sales to cover costs and make profits. Now, together, we can turn this publishing model on its head by having advanced sales directly from me to you. Now, to put that in context, magazines such as Games Master, Edge, and Games TM collectively each month sell 48,000 copies. Below you will find details on various reward tiers which I hope will interest you. I've got a couple of special edition covers I'm working on and a couple of nice ideas there. Even if you can't make it for a copy now, you can still help by spreading the word. This will only succeed if people know about it. Let's make this happen.